The Galactic Empire's message came in the form of a polite panic, encrypted, gilded, and trembling. Greetings, Terran Consulate 1193. Located in Outpost Cluster Harkins Vale, said the ambassadorial voice, smoothed with synthetic pleasantries. Please be advised that a Class 12 predatory bioform has breached containment and is projected to enter your quadrant within 3.2 hours. We advise immediate evacuation, quarantine, or surrender of local authority to Galactic Safety Command. Stay calm. Baba Yaga was shelling peas when the message arrived. The wind rustled the curtains of a little house on the hill, a home so aggressively unmilitary it bordered on satire. There was a rocking chair, a well-fed cat curled by the stove, and an embroidered pillow that said "Bless this mess" in Old Terran script. She wore a faded shawl and soft slippers. Her hair was white and braided back neatly. She looked, in short, like someone's grandmother, and a little like no one's. "Well," she said aloud, watching the notification blink on the screen. "That's rude. They didn't even say please." A knock came moments later, crisp and rehearsed. Outside, a delegation of 3 galactic officers stood at the gate, flanked by jittery honor guards. Their armor glistened in the sun, polished, pristine, and deeply unsuited for dirt paths and wildflowers. Baba Yaga opened the wooden gate and smiled. "Do you boys want lemonade or coffee?" Commander Resh of the Galactic Predation Emergency Division was not accustomed to lemonade, nor to doors without retinal locks, or to being offered baked goods while on planetary biohazard alert. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a metallic stammer, "a harrow spawn has escaped containment. It is en route to your region. We estimate less than 1 standard hour until incursion. We are here to evacuate you and assume full control of Terran consular resources." "Oh," she said, arching her brow. "And what would you need with my kitchen?" He blinked. "Ma'am, consular resources," she repeated, wiping her hands on her apron. "That's what you said. I'm the consul here, sweetie. This is it. The kitchen, the garden, and the porch. There's a rifle behind the pantry, but it's a bit temperamental." "You're the consul?" Her smile turned gentler. "That's what it says on the mailbox." There was, in fact, a mailbox, rusted, dented, and stubbornly nailed to a crooked post. It bore 2 things, the Terran flag and a nameplate engraved with simply Yaga. Commander Resh coughed. His translator hummed and recalibrated. "Ma'am, with due respect, the creature is lethal. It is classified as an extinction-grade predator. It annihilated 3 platoons and devoured an exobiologist in under 40 seconds. "Oh my," she said, eyes widening slightly. 40 seconds? That's hardly polite. Behind her, something chirped. She turned back, lifted a kettle off a stove, and poured boiling water over a mug of tea. Steam curled upward like a spell being whispered. The second officer, Lieutenant KYR, leaned toward his commander. "Sir, she's just a civilian. We need to lock down the area." "I'm not just anything," Baba Yaga murmured, adding honey to the tea. "And no one locks down my begonias." A shadow flickered across the garden path. A distant tree shuddered unnaturally. Commander Resh glanced at the sky. "It's already within atmospheric proximity." "You don't say," Baba Yaga said, and stepped outside with the mug in her hand. The air was still, warm. Bees danced over the lavender hedge. "You should probably run now," she told him kindly. Resh stiffened. "I beg your—" "Run," she said again, smiling. "Take your nice boots and shiny guns and hide behind your cruiser. I have to move the sundial before it gets scorched." KYRR stared at her in disbelief. "You don't understand. This is not some backwater beast. This is a Vraxan harrow spawn, a hunter. The Empire bred it to sniff out spinal tissue. It's late," she said, almost to herself. "I thought it might be earlier." She set down her tea on a flat stone, took a step forward, and looked up at the sky. The sun flared, and something else moved across it. A streak, a ripple, a shape. The officers turned. It fell like a god, metallic-eyed, tendrils twitching, rows of mandibles clicking in hunger. It was 12 feet tall, armored in razor shell and bleeding heat. The ground cracked as it landed. Shrubs shriveled. The air hissed with chemical discharge. Commander Resh raised his weapon, screaming orders. Defensive formation, now. The guard scrambled. Energy fields activated. Drones launched. And in the middle of the garden path, the woman in slippers stood still. The creature's eyes, burning blue voids, locked onto her. She picked up her tea again. The Vraxin harrow spawn took a step. And Baba Yaga sighed. My mother would have scolded you for tracking mud indoors. The creature lunged. It was fast, faster than physics should allow. Its claws shattered the decorative fence. Its scream sent birds fleeing in terror. It was death incarnate, engineered for nothing but precision slaughter. But she was faster. Her hand moved once. Not a punch. Not a beam of light. A simple slap, open palm, across the chitinous face. The sound echoed. Not just in ears. Not just in the atmosphere. In reality, the harrow spawn froze, twitched, then began to unravel. It didn't bleed. It didn't die in a way that anything organic should. It simply came apart, spiraling inward, its matter folding like burnt paper, screaming in 50 frequencies before disappearing entirely into a puff of dust and electric ash. Silence. Baba Yaga blew on her tea. Too hot, she murmured. Commander Resh had fallen. KYRR was kneeling, shaking. One of the honor guards had fainted outright. The garden gate swung lazily in the wind. She turned back toward them. I'd offer cookies, but I suspect you've lost your appetite. Resh's voice was barely audible. What was that? Oh, that. She looked mildly puzzled. That was just a predator. Very loud. Messy, too. You boys should tell your bosses not to let their pets off leash. That slap, it violated entropy. It triggered a ripple in space-time. She sipped her tea. That happens sometimes. KYRR whispered, you're a weapon. Now that's not very polite, she chided. I'm a widow. I tend flowers. I knit socks. I have gout in the mornings. Resh stood, hands trembling. You destroyed a galactic super predator with a gesture. You're legend, she offered. Which? Death's ante. They didn't answer. She walked past them into the kitchen, where a fat ginger cat stared at her accusingly for being late with supper. We're going to need a new rug, she told the cat. Behind her, Resh spoke, his voice flat and horrified. Did the humans know? Know what, dear? That the harrow spawn would come here. That it would choose this consulate. She set down the cup. Her eyes, when she turned to meet his, were no longer kind. Commander, she said softly, how do you think I got assigned to this location? His mouth opened, closed. A fresh tremble started in his hands. I'm not here because Earth feared you, she added. I'm here because you feared Earth. But we never. You sent that thing as a test, she said, to see if our defenses were real, if our threats were hollow. And now you've got your answer. He backed away slowly. We will inform the Senate. Oh, I expect you will. She patted the cat. The wind shifted again. In orbit, something clicked. 100 cloaked Terran ships turned their sensors on. KYRR turned to flee. Resh followed, stumbling, shouting into his comm. Baba Yaga watched them go. The cat meowed. No, she said, rubbing behind its ears. They won't be back tonight. She picked up her knitting. Half a sock hung from the needles. Outside, a scorch mark in the grass was all that remained of the Vraxin harrow spawn. And in the sky above, across encrypted channels, a single message whispered its way through the Empire. Do not approach Terran Garden sectors. Classified as biohazardous. Repeat, avoid all encounters with the Baba. In her rocking chair, Baba Yaga began to hum. The wind stirred, and the kettle whistled once more. It started as a murmur on the interstellar web, a whispered anomaly, a glitch in the Empire's arrogance. Did you see it? She slapped it. No. She deleted it. On the core worlds, analysts replayed the sensor footage from Outpost Cluster Harkins, Veil 1,000 times. Frame by frame, molecular by molecular. What they saw defied logic. The Terran woman moved. The predator stopped existing. No plasma fire. No beam weapon. No kinetic intervention. Just one wrinkled hand and a motion that did not belong in the Empire's understanding of physics. Admiral Zreth of the Bioform Deployment Fleet watched the footage in silence for 17 cycles. When the junior officer tried to comment, he ordered silence, then turned to the window and muttered, "Recall all Harrowspawn units. Every last one." "But sir, Every last one." On a station orbiting the diplomatic nexus of Nereth Prime, whispers spread through the marble halls of the Senate. Species with chitinous exoskeletons, luminous tendrils, and thought waves instead of vocal cords exchanged the same stunned conclusion. The Terrans had ended a weapon bred from death and mathematics, and they had done it with etiquette and refreshments. At the center of it all was a human, a woman, elderly, unranked, officially listed in most databases as agricultural liaison, ornamental flora. But she had erased a bioengineered extinction event with a slap. Now, the Empire was trying to decide whether to laugh, cry, or launch every ship it had. Ambassador Kelly Vox of Aloran hegemony, a species with translucent skin and high-frequency speech, found himself alone in the Grand Archives, rereading old Earth mythology. The name Baba Yaga had surfaced in the hushed reports. It was not a rank. It was a myth. A story they told themselves, like the monsters they once thought humans were. He sat in the quiet and read aloud from the database. Witch of the woods, dweller in the walking hut, giver of death and wisdom, feared, respected, obeyed. He exhaled, ears quivering. We thought they were embellishing. Across the galaxy, fear bloomed like algae in warm water. It multiplied without logic, growing in places it had no right to reach. In a bar orbiting the trade moon Torella 9, a group of mercenaries watched the recording over black ale and fried kelp. They were professional killers, genetically modified, but not a one spoke as they watched the slap land and the creature vanish. A silence followed. Then the captain said, "What do you call someone like that?" One of the juniors whispered, "You call the ma'am," and back away slowly. Meanwhile, on Earth, Baba Yaga tended her garden. The sky was its usual dusty blue. The sun shone. The bees returned. Her cat, indignant from the previous day's chaos, demanded fresh salmon and got it. She knelt among the tomatoes, humming a folk tune in a language no longer spoken, when the second envoy arrived. This time they didn't knock. A soft pulse shimmered in the air, and the grass flattened under invisible pressure. A portal opened, clean, white, humming with excess power. A staircase unfurled with exaggerated grace. Baba Yaga sighed and brushed dirt from her knees. Out stepped a man in pressed Terran uniform, though far too clean for military work. His smile was the kind you wore when holding a scalpel behind your back. "Ms. Yaga," he said, voice smooth as melted plastic. "May I trouble you for a moment?" "You just did," she said, dusting off her apron. "But I'm listening." He gave a tight smile. "It's about your demonstration." "Which one?" "The one currently causing panic in 17 sectors." "Oh," she said, as if remembering an old chore. "That one." He stepped forward. "I represent Earth's Strategic Response and Covert Influence Division, URSID. That's not a name. That's a sneeze." His smile twitched. "We'd like to discuss future deployment scenarios, possible escalations, utilization of your skill set." "I'm retired," she said flatly. "And yet the Empire is rewriting its entire Predator protocol because of you." She looked up at him. "Is that my fault? You slapped a top-tier Apex bioengineered weapon until it ceased existing." "Technically," she said, turning back to her plants, "I slapped it once. It just couldn't take the hint." He crouched beside her, voice lowering. "Do you understand what kind of power you've put on the galactic stage?" "I was always on the stage," she murmured. "You people just forgot to check behind the curtain." His voice sharpened. "You've started something we can't control." She plucked a weed and didn't answer. He rose. "They'll come again. I hope they wipe their feet this time." Back in orbit, cloaked Terran observation ships watched the relay signals fly. Analysts noted unusual mobilizations in the Empire's border fleets. Dozens of weapon labs were purging their data. High command figures were relocating. But most telling of all, communication frequencies went quiet. It was the quiet of things planning. Terran President Leanne Solborn watched the silence with narrowed eyes. She wasn't a military woman, but she had good instincts. And instincts told her that a slap had just started a war. She turned to her chief of staff. Set up the emergency council. Send only one invite. You know who. But she doesn't attend these things. She will now. Aboard the Empire's flagship, Vex Namath, the High Admiral read the report again and again. No known physical law explained the Harrowspawn's reaction. Every hypothesis failed under scrutiny. The humans did this, he said aloud. With no fleets. No weapons. One woman. One movement. His advisor, a creature composed entirely of light and scent, shimmered in concern. Perhaps we should respond diplomatically. To a threat like this? The Admiral stood. No. We don't negotiate with bedtime stories. At the same time, a younger member of the Empire's War Council, Commander Erix, broke into restricted files. Not for orders. For legends. He found Earth's old cultural records. He read the myths, the stories, the names that returned again and again in human folklore. Baba Yaga, the crone, the guide, the eater of fools, the protector of seekers. He leaned back, eyes wide. They named her after their fear. On Earth, Baba Yaga sat by her pond. Her rocking chair creaked. A new sound hummed to life, a tiny whirring drone. It was Terran. She didn't swat it. It hovered respectfully and projected a screen. A message. One line. They're coming. She stared for a moment, then smiled faintly. Of course they are. That evening, under the soft pink twilight of Earth's rotation, she opened the door to a figure waiting quietly by her porch. He was young, nervous, wore the blue of the Terran diplomatic cadre, freshly pressed and already stained with sweat. I'm Cadet Lorne, he said, voice cracking. They said I should report to you. As your aide. Did they now? She said, holding the door. He nodded quickly. They said I was good with alien psychology, that I don't panic, and that if I survived you, I'd be ready for anything. She said, considering. Do you know how to make decent tea? He blinked. Yes, ma'am. Mostly. She stepped aside. Then you may live. Inside, she handed him a broom. There's ash under the hedge. Sweep it away. It used to be something terrifying. As he worked, she lit a candle and watched the stars blink into being. Then the cat meowed. Lorne asked, Ma'am, if I may, what are you? She smiled. Older than you, faster than rumors, and more tired than anyone admits. A pause. But, he asked softly, how did you do it? Do what? Destroy that thing. Make the Empire afraid. She looked at him and for once didn't smile. They trained that predator to sense fear, she said. But fear doesn't move me. I grew up under orbital fire. I buried a family. I've seen creatures made of hunger and governments made of glass. That thing was bred to hunt the weak. She stood slowly, walked to the fireplace, and took down the old, polished shotgun hanging above the mantel. I am not weak, she said. And Earth is not prey. Then she handed the broom back. Now sweep properly, or I'll have to slap you too. That night, the stars shifted. And, across the galaxy, the Harrowspawn program was officially decommissioned. Not with a press release, but with fire. Labs burned. Notes were purged. The Empire denied it ever existed. But the slap existed. It echoed in the fears of generals, the nightmares of scientists, and the prayers of border colonies. Because if one old woman on one quiet outpost could do that, what else were the humans hiding? What else had they trained in their gardens? What other monsters wore smiles? The next day, diplomatic channels began to heat up. The Terrans sent a message to the Empire. Just 3 words. Tea or war. And the galaxy held its breath. The emergency convocation of the Galactic High Senate was called under Protocol Black, reserved only for existential threats. It had not been used since the collapse of the Kyrex continuum. Even then, the senators hadn't looked quite this pale. 12,000 systems were represented. Beings of light, gas, claws, fur, and crystal. each crammed into their enviro-adaptive pods, all tuned into one holographic chamber that shimmered with status and status anxiety. The central dais flickered with encoded presence forms, each signaling varying levels of alarm, denial, and digestive issues. A tall, gold-plated being from the Sorath Dominion stood first. He was shaped like a praying mantis, made of mirrors, and hissed through his translator. The Terrans claimed they merely defended their garden. This is disingenuous. The Harrowspawn was untraceable, bred for stealth, and equipped with psionic displacement. And yet, the woman slapped it. A murmur rippled through the Senate. Not in agreement, but in dread. Slapped had already been reclassified as a technical term in the Empire's war archives. Class X termination via non-kinetic gesture. A gelatinous senator from the Fern Collective oozed forward. We demand full psycholinguistic analysis. How does a slap erase a bioengineered apex entity? Hypothesis, interjected a synthetic senator from the Xylex Forge. Her palm exerted multiversal pressure through mimetic force. The action tapped into archetypal energy. That, or humans possess localized reality warping. The mantid's mirrored face twitched. Localized what? A personality so stubborn it alters causality, the synthetic said flatly. She did not destroy it through violence. She rejected its existence. How is that possible? She's human. They make stubbornness into law. The chamber erupted in confused translations. Several aquatic delegates floated upside down in panic. One bird-like species began spontaneously molting. In the center of the chaos, the presiding moderator of the Senate, a being constructed from rotating spheres of logic, chimed a resonant gong tone. Order. We require a representative of the Terran species to explain this act. There was a beat. Then, like someone remembering they left the stove on, the hologram pulsed, and a new presence entered. Terran Ambassador Richard Vale appeared. He wore an old-fashioned black suit, silver-rimmed glasses, and a smile that was halfway between I'm harmless and I buried the last person who tried that. He stood calmly, sipping coffee. Afternoon, he said cheerfully. Heard there was a bit of noise. The Senate recoiled in programmed unity. Vale adjusted his sleeve. Now before we begin, just a note for the record. Earth had no knowledge of your Harrowspawn's escape. Nor, I might add, did we request a drop-by for lemonade. It came. It snarled. It got slapped. That's all. You knew it was coming, hissed the Sorath senator. No, sir, but if we had, I might have offered it biscuits. Why didn't you defend your station with force? Vale took a slow sip. Because we didn't need to. The gelatinous Fern gurgled. You're claiming one elderly woman is a match for an apex weapon. I'm not claiming, Vale replied. I'm observing. The footage speaks for itself. The Xylex synthetic crackled. That footage has been firewalled, segmented, and reprocessed. Your Baba Yaga cannot be replicated or understood. That's the general idea, Vale said. Then she's a threat. Only if you're rude. More chaos. A Triskeel senator shrieked a color into the void. Several others began demanding sanctions. Vale held up a hand. Now, let's not do anything hasty. Earth remains committed to peace. We like peace. We also like our gardens. And our tea. And our planetary sovereignty. You threaten the Empire, said a voice from behind, cold, regal, unmistakable. High Admiral Vex Namath entered. The silence thickened like a gas leak. Namath was famous for his cold strategies and colder victories. He had never lost a war. And now, he looked like he wanted to start one. You let the Harrowspawn reach your outpost. You used it as a demonstration. Earth wanted us to see your strength. Vale raised an eyebrow. We wanted a quiet Tuesday. It was the Harrowspawn who chose drama. You escalated the situation. We responded. With proportion. You destroyed our top-tier weapon. I believe the term is disciplined. Namath's voice dropped. She humiliated the Empire. She corrected its behavior. Every species with ears or sensory equivalents felt the mood shift. Not because the humans threatened war, but because they hadn't. Namath stepped forward. What is she truly? That woman. That weapon in a shawl. She's a grandmother, Vale said lightly. She's a tactical terror. Vale smiled. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Moderator Oryx chimed again. Ambassador, the Empire demands full psychological profiles of this Baba Yaga. Genetic specs. Combat history. I'm afraid that's classified, Vale said, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. Then you are withholding vital intelligence. Gentlemen, Vale said, voice soft, let me offer a gentle correction. Earth isn't withholding. We're warning. Something in the Senate's airlock vented. Subconsciously. Vale's voice stayed pleasant. You sent a monster to Earth's doorstep. It was the most dangerous thing you've ever made. We responded with someone who makes monsters afraid. You now want to know how we did it, how many more like her exist, what she is. But you misunderstand. He leaned forward. The hologram zoomed in slightly, as if obeying instinct. She's not a weapon. She's a message. No one moved. Vale continued. You've spent centuries thinking we're fragile, unstable, emotional. You built policies on the assumption that humanity was disorganized, that we had no patience for long strategy, that we were loud, impulsive, and easily manipulated. You were right. He smiled wider, but only on the surface. A ripple passed through the Senate. We smiled, Vale said, while waiting. We danced. We sang. We traded recipes. And when your empire reached too far, when your creature crossed a line, we didn't fire missiles. He adjusted his tie. We introduced you to the person who terrifies us. A long silence followed. Vale let it hang in the air, gently tapping the side of his coffee mug. Finally, the gelatinous senator from Fern asked in a shaking burble, how many more Baba Yagas do you have? Vale shrugged. That's hard to say. We don't label them. They tend to object. But there's one thing I can tell you. He leaned forward, voice low. If another Harrow spawn lands on Terran soil, you won't meet her again. A few senators leaned in unconsciously. You'll meet her friends. At least 3 ambassadors fainted. Vale checked his watch. Well, I think that covers everything. Thank you all for your time. Earth remains committed to mutual respect, sovereign peace, and a well-tended herb garden. He smiled one last time. And if the Empire decides otherwise, we'll be ready. The connection severed. The chamber sat in stunned, echoing silence. The Terran ambassador had not threatened war. He had delivered a promise laced in cinnamon and menace. And worse, every species in that chamber believed him. In the aftermath, the Empire's core council went into emergency deliberation. Admiral Namath, pacing like a caged storm, snapped at the aides. We underestimated them. They were always unpredictable. No, Namath said. We didn't underestimate humanity. We underestimated their patience. The aide blinked. Sir. Centuries of mockery, interference, genetic sampling. And they just smiled, cooked, waited. The aide whispered, and now? Now, Namath said, eyes dark, they're done smiling. Elsewhere, back on Earth, Baba Yaga watered her plants. Cadet Lorne watched from the porch, still trying to process everything. Ma'am, he asked cautiously, do you know what they're saying about you up there? I imagine a great many things, she said, adjusting a rose vine. They think you're a weapon of mass destruction. She chuckled. I'm not. They think you're an ancient secret guardian. Not that either. They think Earth is full of people like you. She paused, then smiled. That part's true. The wind stirred. Lorne looked up. Do you think they'll come back? Baba Yaga turned to the sun, eyes narrowing like someone remembering an old scar. Eventually, she said. Arrogance always does. And when they do, she reached for her shotgun, the one above the mantel, and rested it gently on her shoulder. We'll offer tea. Then she walked inside, the screen door creaking shut behind her. Far above Earth, the stars watched, and some of them, for the first time in their long-burning lives, blinked. Admiral Vex Namath stared at the war board with hollow eyes. Every simulation failed. Every projection tilted toward a nightmare. They had tried fleet assault, orbital saturation, planet sterilization protocols. In each model, the Terrans responded not with brute force, but with something worse, precision. Not ships, not bombs, but names. Specific people. Specific actions. Every counterattack triggered a humiliation deeper than the last. Entire empires folded in on the suggestion that a garden woman might be only the beginning. He turned to his aides, each one less confident than the hour before. Status: 3 outposts abandoned. 5 species have requested asylum on Earth. The Vraxii have burned their breeding labs and renounced predatory research. Sir, the Zillion hordes have signed a non-aggression pact and mailed Earth a fruit basket. A what? A fruit basket, with a handwritten note. It said, "To whom it may concern, please do not slap us." Silence fell in the room like a guillotine. Namath's jaw locked. He wasn't afraid of war. He was afraid of uncertainty, of a human word called absurdity that seemed more dangerous than any weapon. It was the same way they fought, with smiles and explosions in reverse order. He waved his hand. Recall all ships from Terran border sectors. Lock all predator programs. Cease psychic probes. Send a message through back channels. What message? He turned toward the stars, his voice low. Tell them we're sorry, and we're leaving. But they didn't declare war. They didn't need to. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, a dozen minor powers watched the Empire's retreat and made the only logical decision: follow. They deleted espionage files, sanitized classified footage, and began issuing public statements praising Terran wisdom and the profound moral leadership of Earth's elder women. Whole planets were renamed in Terran honor. Statues went up not of warriors, but of gardeners holding teacups. In one backwater colony on the rim, children played a new game. One child would pretend to be the hero spawn. Another would be Baba Yaga. The rest would chant. She smiled, she stirred, she stood so still. The monster came and got real chill. She raised her hand, and with one slap, he went to sleep and took a nap. The last child would collapse theatrically, and the whole group would burst into laughter. The adults, watching, never joined in. They understood the deeper meaning. That rhyme had gone viral galaxy-wide, and it had no punchline, only prophecy. On Earth, Baba Yaga was making soup. She hummed a low song in a dialect, so old even Earth's linguists didn't recognize it. The pot simmered. Cadet Lorne sat at the table, spoon in hand, eyes scanning a dozen screens showing galactic news. "They're running," he whispered. "Ma'am, they're actually running. The Empire just withdrew from 7 contested systems without a shot." She stirred the pot once, then tasted. "Too much salt," she murmured. He stared at her. "You ended a 1,000-year empire with one slap and a stare." "I ended nothing," she said. "They ended themselves. I just held up the mirror." But how did they not know? All these centuries, they studied us. They dissected our history, our DNA. Why didn't they see it coming? She looked out the window. A breeze touched the curtains like an old friend. "Because they studied our noise," she said, "not our silence." Lorne leaned forward. "Is that what you are?" Silence. "No," she said. "I'm the thing that waits inside it." Across a dozen worlds, generals were burning evidence, erasing archives, swearing never to speak her name again. The name itself had taken on weight. Baba Yaga was no longer a person. She was a deterrent, a shadow doctrine. And the doctrine was simple. Don't anger Earth. You might meet her. One world dared test it. A rogue general from the Seraph Belt, his pride wounded by the sudden withdrawal of allies, decided to prove the Terrans were bluffing. He launched a raid on a minor Terran colony in the Verdant Reach. The raid lasted 27 minutes. The footage was never released. The system's sun dimmed for 3 hours. When it returned to full light, the general's fleet was gone. His world received a box. Inside, a single knitting needle. And a note. "Let that be the last thread you pull." After that, even pirates stopped approaching Terran shipping lanes. Entire black market industries collapsed from lack of nerve. Back in the quiet house on Earth, Baba Yaga placed a slice of bread beside the soup bowl and nodded at Lorne. "Eat. You'll need strength." "For what?" She sat down, hands folding neatly over the table. We've won nothing. He paused mid-bite. What do you mean? The Empire's scattering. Half the galaxy's terrified. They're gone. They're retreating, she said. Not finished. Power never dies. It hides. It waits. It learns. He swallowed hard. So what now? She looked him in the eye. Her voice was steady. Now, we let them think we're done. Far above, in a hidden station at the galaxy's edge, the remnants of the Empire met in secret. Nemeth stood at the center of a hollow asteroid converted into a secure chamber. Around him were warlords, scientists, seers, and former enemies, united by one thing: fear of Earth. We underestimated the humans, Nemeth began. We misunderstood their kindness as weakness, their culture as chaos, their elderly as obsolete. He tapped a crystalline screen. Images of Earth flickered, gardens, music, feasts, elderly women knitting under trees. We built weapons. They built legends. A murmur. But we are not without hope, he continued. We now know what we face, and knowledge is the first tool of resistance. From this day forward, we operate in shadows. We learn their myths. We mirror their mannerisms. We find the ones they call harmless, and we prepare. Someone raised a trembling claw. You want us to fight them again? Nemeth's eyes blazed. No, I want us to survive them. In a quiet corner of Earth, Baba Yaga set down her spoon and stared into the candle flame. They're plotting again, she said softly. Lorne looked up. How can you tell? The wind changed. The birds paused. He stood quickly. Should we alert command? Mobilize? No. But... She met his eyes. Calm. Resolute. Terrifying. We let them plot. Let them think they're clever. Let them plan 100 years. Because next time, she leaned forward, we won't be so gentle. That night, she went into the woods. No lights. No drone surveillance. Just her and the trees. Deep in the forest, beyond where satellites could see, she came to a clearing where others were waiting. Not many. Just enough. A woman with copper scars. A man missing both eyes, but seeing more than most. A child who did not age. A soldier who had once whispered to stars. They didn't speak. They nodded. And Baba Yaga, Earth's warning in wool slippers, stood among them and said one word. Soon, across the stars, the Empire built bunkers and broadcast fear, disguised as strength. They rewrote history and told themselves it had been a fluke, that no one could slap away a predator, that no planet had warriors hidden in rocking chairs. But Earth knew the truth, because in their soil grew more than flowers. In their kitchens, behind soft laughter and warm hands, they kept the old weapons. They trained them in kindness, sharpened them with memory, fed them stories. And every so often, when the galaxy forgot, they sent out one, just one, to remind them. In the farthest system of known space, a child found an old file, unmarked, unencrypted, buried beneath bureaucratic clutter. It was just a picture. An elderly woman in an apron, smiling. The child stared, then blinked, and a whisper came across the void, carried on nothing. Run.